It was not very long before Marie was awakened one bright moonlight night by a curious noise, which came from one of the corners of a room. There was a sound as small stones being thrown and rolled here and there, and intermittently there came a horrid cheeping and squeaking. "Oh, dear me! Here come those abominable mice again!" cried Marie in terror, and she wanted to awaken her mother. But the noise suddenly ceased, and she could not move a muscle, for she saw the king of the mice working himself through a hole in the wall. At last he came into the room, ran about in it, and got into the little table at the head of her bed with a great jump. "He cried. "Give me your candy! Out with your cakes! Marzipan and sugar stick, gingerbread cakes! Don't pause to argue. If you yield them you won't, I'll chew up NUTCRACKER. See if I don't." As he cried out those terrible words, he gnashed and chattered his teeth almost frightfully, and then made off again through the hole in the wall. This frightened Marie so that she was quite pale in the morning, and so upset that she scarcely could utter a word. 100 times she felt impelled to tell her mother or her sister, or at all events her brother, what had happened, but she thought, of course, none of them would believe me. They'd only laugh at me. But she saw well enough that to suck a NUTCRACKER, she would have to sacrifice all her sweet things. So she laid out all she had of them at the bottom of the cupboard next evening. "I can't make out how the mice have gotten the sitting room," said her mother. "This is something quite new. There never were any there before. See, Marie, they've eaten up all your candy." And so it was. The epicure Mouse King hadn't found the marzipan altogether to his taste, but had gnawed all around the edges of it, so that what he had left of it had to be thrown into the ash pit. Marie did not mind about her candy, being delighted to think that she had saved NUTCRACKER by means of it. But what were her feelings when next night there again came a squeaking close by her ear? Alas, the king of the mice was there again, with his eyes glaring worse than the night before. "Give me your sugar toys," he cried. "Give them you must, or else I'll chew NUTCRACKER up into dust." Then he was gone again. Marie was very sorry. She had as beautiful a collection of sugar toys as ever a little girl could boast of. Not only had she a charming little shepherd with his shepherdess, looking after a flock of milk-white sheep, with a nice dog jumping about them, but 2 postmen with letters in their hands, and 4 couples of prettily dressed young gentlemen and most beautifully dressed young ladies, swinging in a Russian swing. Then there were 2 or 3 dancers, and behind them Farmer Feldkamel and the Maid of Orleans. Marie didn't much care about them, but back in the corner there was a little baby with red cheeks, and this was Marie's darling. The tears came to her eyes. "Oh," she cried, turning to NUTCRACKER, "I really will do all I can to help you, but it's very hard." NUTCRACKER looked at her so piteously that she determined to sacrifice everything. For she remembered the Mouse King with all his 7 mouths wide open to swallow the poor young fellow. So that night she set down all her sugar figures in front of the cupboard, as she had the candy the night before. She kissed the shepherd, the shepherdess, and the lambs, and at last she brought her best beloved of all, the little red-cheeked baby, from its corner, but did put it a little further back than the rest. Farmer Feldkamel and the Maid of Orleans had to stand in the front rank. "Oh, this is really getting too bad," said Marie's mother the next morning. "Some nasty mouse or other must have made a hole in the glass cupboard, for poor Marie's sugar figures are all eaten and gnawed." Marie really could not restrain her tears, but she was soon able to smile again, for she thought, "What does it matter? Nutcracker is safe." In the evening, Marie's mother was telling her father and Grandpapa Drosselmeyer about the mischief which some mouse was doing in the children's cupboard, and her father said, "It's a regular nuisance. What a pity that we can't get rid of it. It's destroying all the poor child's things." Fritz intervened and remarked, "The baker downstairs has a fine grey Counselor of Legation. I'll go and get hold of him, and he'll soon put a stop to it and bite the mouse's head off, even if it's Dame Mouserink herself or her son, the King of the Mice." "Oh, yes," said his mother, laughing, "and jump up onto the chairs and tables, knock down the cups and glasses, and do ever so much mischief besides." No, answered Fritz. "The baker's Counselor of Legation's a very clever fellow. I wish I could walk about on the edge of the roof as he does." "Ah, don't let us have a nasty cat in the house in the meantime," said Louise, who hated cats. "Fritz is quite right, though," said their mother. "Unless we set a trap, haven't we got such a thing in the house?" "Godpapa Drosselmeyer's the man to get us one," said Fritz. "It was he who invented them, you know." Everybody laughed, and when their mother said they did not possess such a thing, Drosselmeyer said he had plenty, and he actually sent a very fine one round that day. When the cook was browning the fat, Marie, with her head full of the marvels of her godpapa's tale, called out to her, "Ah, take care, Queen. Remember Dame Mouserink and her people." But Fritz drew his sword and cried, "Let them come if they dare. I'll give an account of them." But everything about the hearth remained quiet and undisturbed, as Drosselmeyer was fixing the brown fat on a fine thread and setting the trap gently down in the glass cupboard. Fritz cried, "Now, Godpapa Clockmaker, mind that the Mouse King doesn't play you some trick." Ha ha! Ah, how did it fare with Marie that night? Something as cold as ice went tripping about her arm, and something rough and nasty laid itself on her cheek, and cheeped and squeaked in her ear. The horrible Mouse King came and sat on her shoulder, foamed a blood-red foam out of all his 7 mouths, and chattering and grinding his teeth, he hissed into Marie's ear, "Hiss, hiss, keep away. Don't go in there. Beware of that house. Don't you be caught. Death to the mouse. Hand out your picture books. None of your scornful looks. Give me your dresses, also your laces, or if you don't, leave you I won't. Nutcracker, I'll bite. Drag him out of your sight. His last hour is near, so tremble with fear. Viva his last hour is come." Squeak, squeak. Marie was overwhelmed with anguish and sorrow, and was looking quite pale and upset when her mother said to her next morning, "This horrid mouse hasn't been caught. But never mind, dear. We'll catch the nasty thing yet, never fear. If the traps won't work, Fritz shall fetch the grey counselor of legation." As soon as Marie was alone, she went up to the glass cupboard and said to Nutcracker, in a voice broken by sobs, "Ah, my dear, good Mistress Drosselmeyer, what can I do for you, poor unfortunate girl that I am? Even if I give that horrid king of the mice all my picture books and my new dress, which the Christ child gave me at Christmas as well, he'll sure to go on asking for more. Soon I shan't have anything more left, and he'll want to eat me. Oh, poor thing that I am! What shall I do? What shall I do?" As she was thus crying and lamenting, she noticed that a great spot of blood had been left since the eventful night of the battle upon Nutcracker's neck. Since she had known that he was really young Drosselmeyer, her godpapa's nephew, she had given up carrying him in her arms and petting and kissing him. Indeed, she felt a delicacy about touching him at all. But now she took him carefully out of his shelf and began to wipe off this blood spot with her handkerchief. What were her feelings when she found that Nutcracker was growing warmer and warmer in her hand and beginning to move? She put him back into the cupboard as fast as she could. His mouth began to wobble backwards and forwards, and he began to whisper with much difficulty, "Ah, dearest Miss Stahlbaum, most precious of friends, how deeply I am indebted to you for everything, But don't sacrifice any of your picture books or pretty dresses for me. Get me a sword. A sword is what I want. If you get me that, I'll manage the rest. Though he may..." There, Nutcracker's speech died away, and his eyes, which had been expressing the most sympathetic grief, grew staring and lifeless again. Marie felt no fear. She jumped for joy, rather, now that she knew how to help Nutcracker without further painful sacrifices. But where on earth was she to get hold of a sword for him? She resolved to take counsel with Fritz, and that evening, when their father and mother had gone out, and they two were sitting beside the glass cupboard, she told him what had passed between her and Nutcracker with the king of the mice, and what it was that was required to rescue Nutcracker. The thing which chiefly exercised Fritz's mind was Marie's statement as to the unexemplary conduct of his red hussars in the great battle. He asked her once more, most seriously, to assure him that he really was the truth. It really had to be, and when she had repeated her statement on a word of honor, he advanced to the cupboard, made his hussars a most affecting address. As a punishment for their behavior, he solemnly took their plumes one by one out of their busbies, and prohibited them from sounding the march of the hussars of the guard for the space of a 12-month. And when he had performed this duty, he turned to Marie and said, "As far as the sword is concerned, I have it in my power to assist Nutcracker. I placed an old colonel of cuirassiers on retirement on a pension yesterday, so that he has no further occasion for his saber, which is sharp. This colonel was settled on his pension in the back corner of the third shelf. He was fetched out, and his saber, still a bright and handsome silver weapon, taken off and girt about Nutcracker. Next night, Marie could not close an eye for anxiety. About midnight, she fancied she heard a strange stirring and noise in the sitting room, a rustling and a clanging, and suddenly there came a shrill, "Quick! The king of the mice! The king of the mice!" she cried, and jumped out of bed, all terror. Everything was silent, but soon there came a gentle tapping at the door of a room, and a soft voice made itself heard, saying, "Please, open your door, dearest Miss Stahlbaum. You don't be in the least degree alarmed. Don't be alarmed. Good, happy news." It was Drosselmeyer's voice. Young Drosselmeyer's, I mean. She threw on her dressing gown and opened the door as quickly as possible. There stood Nutcracker, with a sword all covered with blood in his right hand, and a little wax taper in his left. When he saw Marie, he knelt down on one knee and said, "It was you, and you only, dearest lady, who inspired me with knightly valor, and steeled me with strength to do battle with the insolent caitiff who dared to insult you. The treacherous king of the mice lays vanquished and writhing in his gore. Deign, lady, to accept these tokens of victory from the hand of him who is, till death, your true and faithful knight." With this, Nutcracker took from his left arm the 7 crowns of the Mouse King, which he had ranged upon it, and handed them to Marie, who received them with the keenest pleasure. Nutcracker rose and continued as follows. "Oh, my best beloved Miss Stahlbaum, if you would only take the trouble to follow me for a few steps, what glorious and beautiful things I could show you at this supreme moment when I have overcome my hereditary foe. Do come with me, dearest lady."